Michael Gove, who is with me now. Michael Gove, welcome. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have both pulled out of the debate, the last TV debate, and it's been cancelled. Given the lack of real public scrutiny of the candidates for this rather important job, don't you think that's a big sadness, a big disappointment?
Yes, I do. I can understand why there are some of my colleagues who, when they see Conservatives debating each other, worry that some of the different emphases that they'll be placing on policies, and indeed, the critiques that they'll mount of other positions, are damaging. But actually, I think when we're choosing the next Prime Minister, it's actually a good thing for members of Parliament, Conservative Party members, and indeed the country, to see the various candidates and to make their assessments.
Why do you think they've pulled out? Do you think it's because they both think, well, we're ahead, we don't want to take any more risks, we can close this down now, and in a sense we can push out Kemi Badenoch, we can push out Penny Mordaunt?
I don't know what the precise tactical calculations will have been, but it's certainly the case that there were a number of my Conservative MP colleagues who didn't like the debates because they felt that they exposed differences.
Too much blue on blue.
I completely respect and understand that, but I think it is perfectly possible. I took part in leadership debates in the past. Perfectly possible to conduct them in a way where people can weigh up the differences between the candidates and know that in so doing, we're in a better position to make a judgment.
Do you think Kemi Badenoch is ready to be Prime Minister?
Oh, yes.
Because she would be the least qualified, the least experienced Prime Minister in terms of big jobs that we've had, I think, for more than a quarter of a century, probably for a century or so, perhaps ever. And this is a sort of multi-dimensional crisis that she would be walking into with the economics, the war in Ukraine, the climate crisis and all the rest of it. It's a very, very hard job at the best of times, and she just doesn't have the experience, and that will count against her if it goes to the members.
Well, to be fair, she has more ministerial experience than Tony Blair or David Cameron had when they became Prime Minister, and she's been in...
They had run a party, of course.
Indeed.
A big job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, she's the same age as Rishi, and she's been in government in 3 very different roles, all of which she's accomplished successfully. I know all of the candidates. I've either worked with them because they've been junior ministers in departments that I've been running, or they've supported me in previous leadership elections. I have no hesitation in saying that of all of the people who worked with me in a department that I ran, Kemi was undoubtedly the outstanding minister. She has an intellectual grasp second to none. She has a capacity to communicate with confidence, but also with empathy. And also, she's brave. It's a rare junior minister who tells their Secretary of State where to get off because that Secretary of State is getting something wrong. Kemi did that to me repeatedly. Now, there were a number of occasions where I told her that I disagreed. She took it in very good part. But it's that confidence based on an understanding from first principles of what you want to achieve that you need in a leader.
You clearly like her, but it would be one heck of a gamble, wouldn't it?
Well, we have in front of us, I think, a range of good candidates. And as I say, I've worked with them all and I respect them all. But I think that Kemi has something special. And she reminds me in a way, even though her politics are different, of both David Cameron and Ruth Davidson. I supported David Cameron in 2005 when there were only about 5 or 6 MPs who were, because I knew that he had star quality. I remember Ruth Davidson when she was running for the leadership of the Scottish Conservatives. She had only one member of the Scottish Parliament supporting her. But when I saw her, I thought, she's the star, she's going to win. And Kemi has something of the same qualities.
And you feel the same thing. Explain to me how she gets into the final 2, because looking at the numbers, I just can't see it.
Well, I think that some of the votes from Suella Braverman will go to Kemi today. I think that some of the other candidates have backers who are feeling buyer's remorse. And who may well come to Kemi. I also think that the logic of many of the people who've been supporting Tom Tugendhat, a friend of mine, the logic of wanting a clean start, I think would incline them towards Kemi. So everything could align. It is possible. And I think that ultimately one of the things we've seen during this race is the more that people see of Kemi, the more impressed they are.
I'm going to have quite a go at a few candidates later on over the climate change issue, particularly people who have taken money from Michael Hintz, the Australian businessman, who is a great supporter of a sort of sceptical organisation on climate change, if I can put it that way. And Kemi Badenoch is one of those. She was very, very dubious about the net zero targets when she made her opening address for this leadership campaign. Is she trustworthy on net zero? Is she a real believer that climate change is genuine and we have to do a lot as a country to combat that?
Totally. Kemi's a scientist. She's an engineer. She absolutely doesn't just accept, but understands the arguments for man-made anthropomorphic climate change. Her concern is not net zero. Her concern is the means by which we get there. There was a very telling exchange when she was asked by one parliamentary colleague for her views on this. And she said, well, when I was in committee, I asked, how are we going to achieve it? Other ministers did not have answers. I believe that Kemi does. I believe that both in terms of changing the energy mix in this country, but also in terms of enhancing biodiversity, which is a critical limb of that, she has ideas. I think it's the case that all of the Conservative candidates for leadership will have some supporters with views that they don't share. It's in the nature of these things that Conservative Party donors, like Labour Party donors, don't necessarily endorse every single one of the candidates' views.
Well, let's turn to the elephant in the room, as it were, because there are plenty of people around in your party, and one of them, Steve Baker, was on this show himself, who think that you are not really supporting Kemi Badenoch. This is a clever plot. It's part of the Rishi Sunak operation. Steve Baker said you've left people behind that support you inside the Rishi camp, and right at the end, Kemi Badenoch will fold into Rishi Sunak. It may happen tomorrow, and it'll be very dramatic, and it's really about Rishi Sunak.
Steve's a friend of mine, and he's a brilliant original intellect.
Kind of friend.
He's a brilliant original intellect, but he's wrong about that. I mean, the thing is, I've been involved in leadership elections, backing David Cameron, running myself twice unsuccessfully. It just doesn't work like that. We don't have automata that we can direct from one campaign to another. MPs make their own minds up. There are friends of mine who might listen to what I have to say, but there are friends of mine whom I try to get to support Kemi, who said, well, we like her, but actually we're going to support another candidate, Michael. I completely understand. But there are feverish conspiracy theories that allege that there are Machiavels and Svengalis who can manipulate Conservative
Mainly
MPs.
called Michael Gove.
It's flattering, but it's just not true.
Okay. Michael Gove put this entire argument to rest on LBC when he told Andrew Marr, do you know what, Andrew, I would not serve in a Rishi Sunak cabinet.
I'll serve in any government, if any Conservative leader
I tried.
Asks me to. Whether or not they will, we will see. But I'm not counting on it. But no, the key thing here, as I say, is I worked with Penny. Rishi's a friend of mine. Tom Tugendhat is a friend of mine. And Liz, I've known for years. And she was a great junior minister when I worked with her. So I don't wish anyone ill. I just think Kemi's the best.
You worked with Penny. Can I ask you, because of what other people are saying, how was she to work with? Was she hard-working? Did she take decisions well? What was your impression of her?
Penny was a loyal and diligent junior minister. When I was in the Cabinet Office, she was Paymaster General during the COVID crisis. One of her responsibilities was making sure that MPs understood everything that the government was doing. She was really good at keeping in touch with colleagues there, and people will have seen her at the dispatch box and will have seen how well she performs there as well.
And she, in that job, took forward the famous or notorious legislation which involved trans rights. So from what you can remember and from what you have seen, has she changed her position on trans rights?
Well, I don't know much about that debate. There are other colleagues who've been more closely involved, including Kemi and Liz, who say that when Penny was leading, which I think was actually when she was in the cabinet beforehand, that she took a position which had to be changed by Kemi and Liz. But this is not my area of expertise.
OK, well, let's turn to one that is your area of expertise, because you were a leading member of Vote Leave. Did Britain have a veto over Turkey joining the EU while we were inside the EU?
We did have a veto, but the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, had made it clear that he did not want to use it.
Well, I can jump back on that a little bit because I've investigated it. He didn't want to say that he would use the veto because he had been told that the implications of that for national security, if Turkey was furious about it, would be too great. But he then said instead that it would take decades and decades before Turkey was in, which it appears to be the case.
Well, he also said, and I don't want to refight all the battles of 2016, he said he wanted to, I think, pave the road from Ankara to Brussels. It was a complex situation. The UK always, when it was in the EU, would have had a veto over the accession of any other country. That's a fact. But at the same time, it was very clear, everyone knew that David didn't want to exercise that veto.
So it's a complicated situation. But when I asked Penny Mordaunt whether we had a veto, she said we did not have a veto. And I just put it to you, that was a falsehood.
Well, I think that Penny subsequently had a chance to outline her position. And as I understand it, what she was trying to get across was the fact that while there was a veto, absolutely in the treaty, that the sure and certain knowledge that David wasn't going to use it meant that it was a card that wouldn't be played.
Not quite how it sounded at the time, but there we go. Let me ask you, there's been a lot of rumours. I've been talking to very well-placed colleagues of yours who say that Boris Johnson is determined that Rishi Sunak should not succeed him and is trying to help get together a sort of Stop Rishi campaign. And the question on the right of the party is whether Penny Mordaunt or indeed Liz Truss would be the best placed person to stop Rishi. What's your view?
Well, again, I think Kemi Badenoch is the best person to be in the final two. And I don't think it's a case of stopping anyone. I think it's a case of giving the country the best possible choice. And I think that Kemi should be in that mix.
You worked very, very closely with Rishi Sunak. Do you have any reservations about him at all?
No, Rishi is he's a great guy. I remember having a meal with Rishi a long time ago when he was working at the think tank Policy Exchange, encouraging him to become an MP. And I think he's an outstanding talent. I think Kemi has that additional element that we need as our next Prime Minister. But as I say, I think all the candidates have something to offer, and Rishi is a uniquely talented guy.
Well, we've all noticed, because it's been public, there is a gap between what Rishi Sunak says on tax and what Kemi says on tax on the one hand, and the other candidates on the other. Do you yourself think that offering large, unfunded tax cuts at this point in the economy is a good thing to do or a bad thing to do?
It's not a good thing to do. Any Tory who comes on here will say that they're an instinctive tax cutter. But I think when you look at the pressures on the state at this time, but more particularly when you look at the nature of government borrowing, I think that any tax cuts need to be funded. I think
is it dangerous for the economy then to offer unfunded tax cuts and indeed deliver them if you become Prime Minister?
Well, I wouldn't say dangerous, but I think it's more prudent to say if you are going to cut taxes, to demonstrate how they will either be funded or how you can be absolutely confident that that tax cut will generate more revenue than you forfeit.
Right. Now, you've talked very frankly already about your conversation with Boris Johnson when he asked you to step back and leave your job. One thing that really strikes me, because I know that you have focused very, very hard on that levelling up department, put a huge amount of effort and thought and time into that. Do you think that by removing you so briskly from that job, he has in effect let down not you, but a lot of the people for whom levelling up was going to be so important?
No, I don't think so. I think Boris has many achievements to his credit, and I don't think in removing me he wanted for a second to diminish the importance of levelling up. We were elected on 2019 manifesto to reverse geographical inequalities. Boris threw time and energy and passion into supporting me in that. He brought talented people from outside government like Andy Haldane in order to try to achieve that.
And then at the end, because of the psychodrama, he sabotaged all that.
I think the key thing now is to look to the future. I want to make sure that all of the leadership candidates and whoever is our next Prime Minister redoubles a commitment to addressing these geographical inequalities. It is fundamentally morally wrong in an advanced economy like the United Kingdom that we should have such a big gulf between the southeast and the North Midlands and the southwest. But it's also profoundly economically inefficient.
But it takes a very, very dedicated, hard-working and very senior minister to drive this through government, and there is no such person there now.
Well, I think you're unfair to my successor, Greg Clark, who did the job, or a very similar job, in the past, and everything that I've seen Greg do so far, I think has been excellent. However, it will be for the new Prime Minister to decide what energy and resource they want to give to the levelling up mission, and I hope that the new Prime Minister will take it seriously, because, again, from one shouldn't think about these things politically, but politically for a Conservative Party, it is a good thing that we now have a wider spread of people supporting us, not just geographically, but in income terms. We have to be a political party that represents people on average and lower incomes, and have policies that will help them lead a better life. If we retreat into thinking that we can either win again or govern well by abandoning levelling up, then that would both be a moral failure, but it would also be politically damaging.
Boris Johnson has just given a very characteristically rambunctious final speech to the House of Commons about the record of his government. Looking back, do you think his fall was inevitable?
I don't think anything's inevitable, but I think that at this stage, I think it's probably better for all of us to try to bear in mind the good that he achieved, not just on Brexit, the vaccine, and Ukraine, but on putting levelling up and addressing inequality at the heart of his political agenda.
But you were the guy who famously back in 2016, and I suspect you've never been quite forgiven for it, said that he couldn't lead and he couldn't put together a team. Looking back, you were absolutely right, weren't you?
Other people should make that judgment. He won and won well in 2019, not just the Conservative leadership election, but the general election. I think if you're judging any political career, particularly one as momentous and significant as Boris's, you should look at it in the round.
Now, he was going for you for a while, and he is now going for Rishi Sunak. If Rishi Sunak was to win this contest, he would have Boris Johnson almost literally sitting on his shoulders for the next 2.5 years. I just put it to you that for the Conservative membership, therefore, to choose Rishi Sunak would be to choose a big division inside the Conservative Party and a big fight inside the Conservative Party, and that would be a risk.
I don't agree. I think that we should choose the best possible candidate. I think the best possible candidate is Kemi Badenoch. I think Kemi is very well placed to unify the entire Conservative Party, but people should make a judgment based on who they think is best. I think the more people see of Kemi, the more they will recognise that she is the right person, both in terms of bravery, intellect, approachability, and also the capacity to unify.
There was that extraordinary moment in the ITV debate last night when all the candidates were asked, would you have Boris Johnson back in your cabinet? Raise your hands. And none of them, including Kemi Badenoch, did. Do you think he was going to come back into frontline politics, or do you think this is it for him?
I don't think any of us could afford him in the cabinet at the moment, but in financial terms, because he's going to earn so much. But no, do you think it's time for him to leave politics, at least for a while? I wouldn't for a moment try to tell Boris what to do. He has immense talents. He's got a lot to contribute in the future, but he will decide for himself.
And do you think, Ian Duncan Smith said that he suggested that in due course he should even stand down as MP. He said he has no desire to put a straitjacket around himself, that's for sure. I would be astonished if he decided to step into another cabinet role, that's for sure. I expect him to stay in politics, and I'm sure he will stay until the next election, but he won't want to be the ghost at the dinner party.
Well, again, Ian has a way with words. I just don't know. And I think the thing is that trying to predict the future for someone with Boris's character, with his protean ability to adapt to whatever chances and opportunities are in front of him. I think there are many more chapters in Boris's story, and he will write them, and I suspect that he'll write them in a way that will confound many of us
and make him a lot of money at the same time.
Yes.
If I say who's going to win, you have to say Kemi Badenoch.
Yes.
If I say apart from Kemi Badenoch, who's going to win? What do you say?
I don't know, because I think it's genuinely so fluid. I know that there are some people who have backed...
Right. I'm so sorry. If it's Rishi versus Liz Truss, who wins?
Oh, I don't know. I think the thing is that everything's been so dynamic. So in the course of the last week, we've seen in the polls of Conservative members a significant oscillation. Some people who've been written off significantly gaining. There are some MPs who back certain candidates who expressed to me a certain sense of buyer's remorse. Does that mean that they will change their votes? We will see. I think it's incredibly difficult to call.
Supporters, isn't it?
It wouldn't be fair. Incredibly difficult to call.
Helter-skelter days, Michael Gove. Thanks very much indeed for coming in and trying to explain what you're allowed to and can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.